Hi, Jim. Hi, everybody. Today is the very first Visnostic and Wine podcast series, which is going to have success stories on it. And with 30 million people unemployed today, I couldn't think of a better success story than someone looking for a job. So Jim Hester is a very dear friend of mine. We work together at HP. And Jim, please share your Visnostic success story.
Good afternoon, Kim, and hello everyone from Houston, Texas on a bright and sunshiny afternoon. Anyway, so Kim and I have obviously known each other for a few years back to our HP days, but my real first use of Visnostics here has been to redo my resume. I felt like my resume was getting very antiquated, just didn't have it's getting too long. As you get older, you get more experience, you build up all those pieces and parts over time. It's great to have all that stuff, but how do you get that across to somebody, to a recruiter or something quickly, So I redid with some help from Kim on some format things. I use the results, time, kind of formula to redo my resume and to look at and kind of prioritize what were my top items that I wanted people to know about, and how could I articulate that quickly to them, let's say exceeding quota for 12 out of 15 years, those type of things. So after I kind of worked through, and it took a little time before I could actually start writing the thing, but after I had thought about it for a while, I started kind of writing bullets one at a time. And then I came up with a list of bullets. Then I went through and prioritized them. Then I took them and put them into this format, which I liked. It was a little different format. It kind of consolidates everything into one page instead of what was 3 or 4 pages before. With all the basic information there, but also tying it back to things like LinkedIn and other things where if they want some more, they can always go dig and get a little more. But anyway, so then I said, okay, so we finish this thing, and let me, try it out. So obviously I sent Kim a copy, and she thought it looked good. And then I started trying it out on some other people and sending it, and I was really kind of pleasantly surprised by the type of feedback that I was getting from some friends and coworkers. But in the process, while this whole thing was taking place, I had already submitted my longer resume to a job application and was going through interviews for that job. So I'm thinking, man, well, they've got this big long interview, and we've had these great phone conversations, like 4 or 5 interviews already with this one company. I said, how can I use this new resume that we've created here, this new Visnostic profile or whatever you want to call it? And how can I use that to help me along in this job process? Because obviously there's quite a few people in that process and they're tied into it. So what I decided to do is I used it up as a follow-up after calls. So I'd have a call and I'd send them a thank you note. And along with the thank you note, that would be my first thing I did. And then I'd wait about 3 or 4 days and I would send them another thank you note, but this time with the profile attached. Okay. And then after that, I would wait a couple of days and I would send them another thank you note. And this time it would be all my recommendations out of LinkedIn. And so far, I've got one more interview left, and then hopefully we'll be hearing some results of this thing. So I know it's down to just a couple of people. So to start off, and a kind of long-winded approach, that's how I started using Big Visnostic for my profile. Well, I'm calling my profile now instead of my resume, but my profile.
Just tell me how you learned about Visnostics.
Well, how did I learn about it? Well, as you probably can get from the conversation, Kim and I have known each other for years. Actually, I used to work for her years ago at HP. We've stayed in contact. We've been friends. And how I learned about Visnostics was just when we started talking about ideas of how people communicate and the power of using pictures, because I've always been a big believer in that because I'm a technical guy and I would rather do a whiteboard for somebody than show them PowerPoint or to give them a nice long document to read. So I'm very, I recognize the value of visualization and how that taps into a different part of a person's brain than the boring snoozers of the so many bullets or so many lines on a PowerPoint, those type of things. So I've always been a big believer in that. And then when Kim was talking about this, and she was starting to write her book, it wasn't named Visnostics at that time. It had a different name, but Visnostics was a brilliant name as it kind of described the process. So I was obviously involved in that book from some proofreading and things like that, and giving some feedback. So I've been around it for a while. Like I said, I believe in the power of presenting things visually. To me, if you're doing, I've always been in technical pre-sales, so working with salespeople, and salespeople can get, I hate to say this, not to hurt anybody's feelings, but they can get pretty wrapped up in words, and technical people, that's not the way they like to see things. They like to see things in pictures, and I think we're finding out that people in general like to see visualization, pictures and things visualized much more than they like to read a 200-page document about something.
All right. So Jim and I are going to share something pretty intimate. This is something, how much time do you think we put into this, Jim?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of evolved over about a week or two period of time, probably maybe a week, but it wasn't like the number of hours. It's more of a thought process you have to go through. And that's what I would tell people is don't try and put a time crunch. And that was the thing I didn't do on this, is I didn't put a time period on it. Mm-hmm. Okay. I didn't say it's going to be done in 2 days. I didn't think it was be done in 2 hours. I just said, okay, let me start thinking about the process of what I want to say and the pieces that I want to get involved. Let me start thinking about quantitative measures so I can have some really finite results to this stuff. And I can give them some numbers and matrix and things like that. Once I started gathering those, then you've got to start writing them down, because they're going to start popping in your head. Oh, I did this. And you're going to come up with things that you haven't thought of in a while. And I think we're all very guilty of that. As we go through our work careers are years in length. They're not days in length, especially as you start getting a little older. Well, there's been a ton of accomplishments that you went through. I mean, there was a thing I was thinking about that I had even forgot about. I didn't happen to put it on my resume because it doesn't apply to the field I'm in now. But when I first got out of college, I was working for an oil and gas company, and I was running their materials management group for that district. And we were drilling 500 wells a year per year, which is unbelievable. And on top of that, building a pipeline, and on top of that, building a gas purification plant. And I had materials for all that. And I was thinking about how many millions of dollars of average inventory I was running through that warehouse, and how many times I was turning it, and how much pipe we were moving, and all those type of things. I said, gee, that's really impressive, but it doesn't apply to where I am today. So we have to be kind of careful about our resume too, is although we've done some things like that, and they're impressive quantitatively and qualitatively and look good in a resume, they may not be appropriate for what you're doing or the jobs that you're looking for. So you may want to think about that as you're kind of putting those bullets together.
Okay, well, let's take a look at what we did here. So I'm going to share my desktop. Is everyone seeing it? Tim, can you see it? All right. So don't even try, if you're watching this, don't even try and read this. That's not the point. This is probably what most people's resume looks like. It's the way we were taught to do it. You put, at a certain age, you put your education at the end. If you right out of college, you put it at the beginning. It's just a normal, typical resume format. So in the Visnostic analysis process, what we end up doing is we use the highlight method. And so what I like to do is whenever there's results highlighted in green, and Jim, what were you working on here on the highlights with yellow? What did the yellow mean? Were those also potential results?
Yes, yeah, they were different. The different things within the document, different things we're using, but they were all results, right?
What I love about this story right here, just looking, forget trying to read it. Results in green And look, they're at the bottom of the second page. And that is the way we have all been conditioned to talk. Talk about what you do, and then talk about what happens with what you do. What are the results? And that's what we've got to change, because you've got to get into the head of your audience. And in this case, it's a hiring manager who's probably got hundreds of resumes, and you literally have 3 seconds to grab their attention. They're going to start at the top. And if they don't, and they're translating, why do I hire this person instead of the other people? And the reality is, I've hired a lot of salespeople in my career. The reality is, when you're going through your first resumes, you're looking to eliminate. You're looking for a reason to toss this one. And if you don't have your results at the beginning, you're going to get tossed before they even make the time to look at your results. So we have to reverse this. We have to take the results and move it to the front. And we need to be careful of words. Words are subjective, and words have a profound effect of the chemicals in your brain. So if you use passive words like manage, responsible for, I managed, those things are assumed because it's a resume. What people care about is, what are the outcomes from that? If you sold something, what did you sell and how fast did you sell it? What was your quota and how fast did you get to your quota? They want to know, and this goes back to Visnostics basics, the RTH formula. The RTH formula is results, timeline, and how, which you will not remember. So using visualizations, I want you to envision a giant green $, a red clock, and then a toolbox. And I don't care what color the toolbox is. I've got a dog hair in my nose. That's why it's tickling my nose. So that's why green is the highlight of choice to identify results. And then if there's a timeline, like how quickly did you get the results, I usually use some kind of red or pink, to make that stand out. So remember, a green $, a red clock, and then a toolbox. That's the RTH formula: results, timeline, and how. So once you go through your resume and you do these highlights, now you know what needs to change. So Jim, you want to explain what, I think I sent this back to you, right? From this point, what kind of analysis and what process did you go through?
Well, so, I think we're all guilty of putting things in our resumes, like results driven, business oriented, all that things, all those type words, and they're all great. There's nothing wrong with using the words. The problem is how do you really prove that you do those things? Because they're easy to say and hard to do, right? So that's where the quantitative piece, the results, timeline, how piece comes in. That's where you've got to go back and put some quantitative, be a little more quantitative than qualitative. Now, obviously, there's going to be parts where you're talking about that you're a great communicator, and you may use some different terms. That's going to be hard to quantify. But there's other things that when you look at your sales results over the course of a year, over the course of the years, you're going to be able to put some quantifiable things in there. Out of those X number of years you've been in sales, how many years did you exceed quota? How did you do that? I had great teams. We did that through blah, 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 whatever. So, I think that it makes you think through that process. And like I said, there are some pieces that are going to be very quantifiable. And you'll see that in my resume, or what I kind of call it my Visnostic profile now instead of a resume. But you'll see that where some things are very quantifiable when I could do it, and other things are more verbiage. Like if you look down in some of the specialties and strengths, some of those are might say excellent communicator or excellent verbal and written communicator, things like that. If I've got some examples, I try and put examples on there.
Yeah, so look at the first 3 words. So first of all, the very first thing that jumps out to you is results on this resume. And just look at the first few words. Won multiple sales, exceeded quota, and you've got even numbers, averaging over 125% of plan during 12 years. There's the timeline of a 15-year sales career. The next one is grew multiple accounts from 0 to multi-million-dollar revenue. I mean, it keeps going on too. I mean, you want to keep reading when you have words like grew, increased, tripled, drove, won, exceeded. Those are powerful words that get people excited because you're translating all of your skill sets into the results they could get if they hired you. So this is the format. And you think like your audience. Right now, I promise 99% of you guys have got, here's the dates that I worked here. Here's the dates I worked here. And they're, you know what? They're having to add it up and say, okay, he was only there 6 months. What's wrong? Red flag, toss it. Or, oh, there's a gap in years, so I'm going to get rid of them because they were obviously unemployed. I think dates are the dumbest thing to put in a resume because you're giving them a reason to eliminate you. So,
You're
but
also,
these,
the other thing that if you're not a young millennial, and a lot of us aren't, and those dates sometimes can turn people off and say, oh, they're automatically look at it and they go, oh, they're older,
Yep.
So, I mean, but if you look at what we did in this, is you just look at the enterprise tenure over in the lower right-hand corner, it talks about how many years you've been doing, in the industry. It talks about how many you've been in like a pre-sales role or a sales role, or how much some of the time you have in certain areas of specialization.
yeah,
And one of the things that I liked is the link. If you'll notice up at the top of the page, underneath where we talk about my name and the first kind of descriptor thing, you'll see that it has my LinkedIn profile. So if they want to go look at all the details of the jobs that I've had, they can pop that LinkedIn deal. But again, I've got them. I've got their attention, right? If they pop that link, I've got their attention already.
yes. So here's the main reasons that they're going to want to interview you. Those results, your strengths, probably your education. They want to know that, you're qualified. I love the most proud of section. And this is something you just see in resumes. Jim, go ahead and explain or go over your most proud of moments.
Well, I mean, it's pretty easy. I like to think that at least I try and make decisions that are ethical. So, I mean, to me, that's something I'm proud of, that I operate on some form of ethical system, or hopefully a good one. I've always been proud of that I worked my way through college and didn't, it wasn't given to me. I had multiple jobs. I worked work study. I tutored finance. I did a whole variety of different things all at the same time to get through school. And then I'm a big dog lover. So picture my little baby boy there. Love classic rock music. I had to want to put that in there. Just something a little personal, something that they had a little different twist. So obviously I had a really cool picture of Mr. Bongo, who's here in the room with us today. I'm surprised he hasn't popped his head up on the screen, but that's my Boston Terrier boy, and he's my little buddy that I run around with. And then, what else do you like to do? So I said, maintaining a tight group of friends and coworkers and relationships like that. And I think that gives them a little personal feel to you, especially if, who knows, the person that may be looking at your resume they may be a dog lover. They may have French Bulldogs or Bostons, who knows, and that may be, boom, that may pop their right to their mind and go, hey, I like this person already. Let me dig a little deeper. And that's really what you're looking for in everything that you write, in every bullet that you make on this Visnostic profile. You're looking for them to want to know that little bit more. Give me that little bit more. Give me that next nugget. I'm wanting them to read that next line. I'm wanting to get from that line to the next line, because every time that they go deeper into this document, the better chance I've got of them taking it to the next step, whether it's going from a recruiter to the hiring manager, getting it in their hands and say, hey, here's a candidate that I really like. Look at the background. It's a really good fit for what we're looking for. Really suggest that you interview them, so on and so forth. I mean, you're looking, as you think about, we think about jobs as the end result being a job, but really we've got to think about jobs as a getting to know you and you getting to know them process. And you're wanting them to gather more and more information so they can differentiate, that'll help differentiate you from the other resumes that they get, you know, because you're sitting on their desk as a stack of paper. You're not sitting in the room with them and be able to differentiate yourself that way. So it's a little more difficult task, but I think that if you, and that's the reason I think, you know, when you look at doing results, when you look at doing your strengths, after you've written those up and you've got them the way you like, you know, the lots of good verbiage and pieces there, you know, go back and this is something Kim and I talked about, but she kind of told me, she says, go back and place them in order of importance, you know, in that way, again, that's that leading process of leading the people through the process of, I want to know more about this person. So by the time I get them through results, hey, I want them to start looking at strengths. What else can this person do? You know, and you know, the other thing is you send resumes in for specific jobs. What if the recruiter reads this and says, you know what, I think I've even got a better job for this person. I really like this person as a fit over here.
Great point.
So, you know, so you can really do some, I think by getting creative, and you're wanting something to differentiate yourself. So you're trying to use graphics, you know, obviously, again, this, to call it a Visnostic profile maybe is not fair because it's not all as visual as we would like everything to be visual and not to have words on here to describe, but you can't quite do that. But where you can use pictures, where you can emphasize, and you know, even the little check marks are powerful, right? So think about it, somebody going through, you know, looking at a job, you know, what are they doing? They're running through your resume, putting little check marks going, oh, they've got this, they've got that. Oh, I've got to have a bachelor's degree. They've got a bachelor's degree. I'd really like for them to have this or that. Check, check, check. So this is kind of a little subconscious Visnostic thing that's in there that's very, very in your face, but it's really kind of powerful because it's saying, hey, look, if I check the boxes on all these things, okay? And that's really what that first recruiter is really doing, is they're checking the boxes. Do they meet the base level? Do they go above the base level? Are they really a top candidate? Do they have the background that I need? They're checking all those boxes, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of recruiters that, you know, I've given them pictures and they're like, oh, get the picture off. People only use pictures to eliminate. But I can tell you that I've hired a lot more with pictures because, you know, especially in today's world, I mean, think about it. Do you accept a friend request from someone that doesn't have a picture? Do you spend much time on a LinkedIn that doesn't have a photo? Photos are more and more important. I mean, selfies are a big deal today. When we were young, no. So I think that's something that's really changed. I think you do need a picture on there. And these little icons too, under the most proud of, you know, you got that scale that lawyers use, you know, for right or wrong, which is real symbolic. There's a little guy on a little pedestal helping another guy up. There's a book with a pen, and then there's, you know, 3 people representing, you know, a network or a family, and then you've translated basically what people are looking for. You've got HPE and Compaq are mentioned. Those are big companies. It talks about, you know, 20 years you spent there, 4 years as IT solution provider for resale communities. So that means you're in the channel. You got channel experience, 10 years in IT management. So you're not just a individual contributor. You also have management, 10 years of management skills. So all of these things, if you had a bunch of companies listed and a bunch of dates, that person is having to sift through that to try and find and interpret this. So let's go back to how this resume first started.
You know, and something I want to bring up here, Kim, that was kind of tough for me, and it may be tough for other people. So when you spend a long time at one company, typically you've not had just one job. So I can just give you a quick example. When I started at Compaq, I was in IT, and then I moved into training, and then I did a couple different roles inside of training. Then I moved into a business unit, what we call a business unit, and then I moved into the field sales organization. So now, how do you without making this a small book, your resume, how do you portray all that experience and how you know, and get that, you know, in a quick encapsulated form to a recruiter? Now, obviously, as you go through an interview process, you're going to hopefully have the opportunity to talk more about that. But the concept is the nice piece of this is that it by doing it that way, it gets them a lot of information very quickly without them having to dig for it.
Right, because right here you can see the original. The same information was in here, but it was a lot harder to find. Now it's not only easier to find, it's in the priorities that the reader wants to see it. Sorry about my dogs, you guys. They were so quiet, I figured they would nap through this. So anyway, that's it. I want to keep these sessions to 30 minutes or shorter. So we've gone over that. I'll probably have to edit out some of the dog stuff when I go to finalize this. But Jim, thanks for your time and keep us posted. And you know what? You can always use this video too to go over your resume if something doesn't work out. I have a feeling you're going to get an offer in the next few days.
Let's hope so.
Okay. Have a great day, Jim. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Good luck to you on creating your resumes.